It started on a Tuesday night, quiet like most graveyard shifts are my unit. The halls were still. The fluorescents buzzed overhead with that dull, ceaseless hum. I was doing my meds round like always, carts squeaking down the corridor when I stepped into room 217. That's where Dorian was. Dorian had been with us for 6 years. Catatonic, silent, no outbursts, no eye contact, no speech. He was the kind of long-term case that just faded into the background of the ward. You give meds, you chart, you move on. He never responded to anything. Not to touch, not to light, not even to loud noises. You could set a fire alarm off in that room, and he wouldn't flinch. But that night, he smiled at me. It stopped me mid-sentence. I was just going through the motions, saying, "All right, Dorian, same routine, like I always did, more out of habit than hope." Then his head turned. Slowly, eyes met mine, and his lips curled up into a grin. Not a twitch, not a reflex, a smile. At first, I thought it was a breakthrough. I smiled back, asked if he could hear me, if he wanted to say something. He didn't move again, just kept smiling, like he knew something I didn't. I told the night doctor. He shrugged it off. "Maybe he's finally responding to stimuli," he said. "Document it, we'll follow up." So I did. But that smile, it never left him after that. And I started noticing something else. He only did it when I was alone in the room. If someone else came in with me, tech, nurse, doctor, he'd go limp again. Blank eyes, slack jaw, dead expression. But as soon as I was alone, there was again that slow, curling grin. By Thursday, I was uneasy. Friday, the hallway camera outside his room started glitching. The screen would freeze for a few seconds every time I rolled the cart past. Static, then black. It always came back on, but the timing was weird. Too consistent. Same spot, same second. I reported it to maintenance. Old wiring, they said. This wing was rewired in the early 2000s. Happens. But the camera outside room 216 didn't glitch. Room 218? Perfectly fine. Only Dorian's hallway. I tried to shake it off. I even laughed about it in the break room. Spooky patient decided to wake up just in time for Halloween. I joked. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Then came Sunday night. I was short-staffed and running behind. It was nearly 3 a.m. when I passed his room. The door, room 217, was cracked open. We never leave those doors unlocked. Never. They're heavy set with auto locks. The kind of institutional safety design that takes 2 badges and a firm shove to open. I hesitated, called out softly, "Dorian?" No response. I pushed the door open. He was standing on the bed, not sitting, not lying, standing, with his bare feet planted on the thin mattress, toes curled like he was gripping it. His back was straight, his face tilted up, staring at the ceiling tiles. And he was smiling, wider than before, far wider. The corners of his mouth stretched in a way that looked painful, almost torn. His teeth were yellow, gapped, too many. His eyes were wide, unblinking. I stepped inside. The air was cold. Not room temp cold. Wrong cold. Like a freezer door had been left open too long. I felt it in my lungs. I glanced at the walls and froze. There were claw marks. Dozens of them. Deep gouges in the concrete, like something had been scratching in frantic spirals. Some human, some too long and thin. Black streaks lined the edges like char. Above the bed, scrawled in thick, smeared charcoal, were 5 words. "You look just like her." I backed out. Didn't even close the door. Just turned and walked fast, nearly ran, straight to the station. I filed a request for psychiatric reassessment. Something had changed. I documented every detail. The smile, the wall markings, the door being ajar. The on-call psychiatrist said we'd monitor his behavior. But the next night, Dorian was gone. Not in his bed, not in the unit, not in the system. I asked the day nurse if they transferred him. She said, "Oh, I think he was discharged this morning." Discharged? Dorian hadn't had visitors in years. No family, no guardian. He was state custody, level 4, no contact. There wasn't a discharge protocol for someone like him without at least 3 psych evaluations and a court order. I checked the records. Nothing. His chart stopped abruptly, no notes after my report. I pressed the supervisor. She just looked confused. "I don't know, Alira. Maybe it was an admin error." I knew better. Dorian was gone, like he'd never existed. 2 weeks later, I was leaving the building after a swing shift. It was past midnight. The lot was nearly empty. I was fumbling for my keys when I felt that chill again, that same unnatural cold on my neck. I looked up, and there he was, across the lot, standing under the flickering street lamp, just watching. Same tattered hospital gown, same slack arms at his sides, same smile. I blinked, and he was gone. Security footage from that night? Corrupted, they said. I never saw him again, but I still get drawings slipped under my locker sometimes. Childlike. Crude. Me, smiling, standing on a bed, under the words. You look just like her. I sleep with the lights on now, and every time I pass an empty room, I listen closely for breathing, just in case, because whatever Dorian was, he wasn't just a patient, and that smile, it still burned into the back of my mind. Thank you to all my amazing viewers for joining me in these chilling, emotional journeys. If this story moved you or gave you goosebumps, hit that like button and subscribe to join us deeper in the shadows. Every like breathes life into another tale, and every subscriber becomes part of our growing circle of listeners. Now, take a deep breath because our next chilling story is just around the corner. Everyone in the ward knows about room 6B, or at least we thought we did. When I was first hired at Aldergrove Psychiatric, the older nurses told me 6B had been sealed years ago after a minor fire in the East Wing. Storage only, they'd say. Nothing to worry about. Just old equipment and dust. No one had a key. The door was bolted shut. And over time, it just faded from our routine like an appendix in the floor plan nobody used anymore. That changed the night the storm hit. It was one of those brutal early spring storms. Sheets of rain hammering the windows, wind howling through cracks in the siding, the occasional flash of lightning giving the flickering hallway lights an even creepier pulse than usual. Around 2:17 a.m., during one of those long, silent stretches where even the patients seemed unnerved by the weather, the motion alarm tripped in the east corridor. Now, let me be clear. That section of the building hasn't housed patients in years. The alarms were installed only for security protocol, mostly to prevent loiterers or staff from storing personal items where they shouldn't. But this alarm? It was coming from room 6B. The supervising nurse on duty stared at the screen, frowning. That can't be right, she muttered. It's probably the storm, maybe some wiring shorted. Still, procedure. Someone had to check it out. So I volunteered. I remember how the hallway felt as I walked down it. Wrong. Somehow, too quiet, as if the storm had been swallowed by the old concrete walls. The air was thick with that damp, electric smell that hits before a lightning strike. The motion detector's red light above 6B blinked steadily, like a heartbeat. And then I saw it. The door to 6B, the one that was supposed to be sealed shut, was slightly open. Not wide, just enough to see darkness inside. Enough to feel a change in air pressure that made my ears pop. I called out, "Security? Anyone there?" But my voice sounded muffled, like I was speaking underwater. I pushed the door open slowly. Inside, the room was a graveyard of forgotten equipment. Rusted gurneys, broken 4 poles, dusty mattresses stacked like coffins. The air smelled like burnt rubber and mildew. Dust blanketed everything. It should have looked undisturbed. But in the center of the room sat a wheelchair, not buried in the mess, not against the wall, right in the center, facing away from the door, facing the wall. It looked new, too new. Its wheels were clean, the vinyl untouched by dust. And though I didn't understand it at the time, my skin prickled with the kind of fear that starts deep in the gut, the kind your body knows before your brain does. I stepped inside. The silence was thick. I took one cautious step toward the chair, then another. And then, stupid, really, I turned my back to check the door. When I looked again, the wheelchair had moved. It was now facing me. It hadn't made a sound. Not a scrape, not a squeak. Just turned, as if someone had pivoted it with slow, deliberate hands. I froze. That's when I noticed the faint tracks in the dust, 2 clean arcs from the chair's wheels, carving out a clear trail across the floor. Before I could react, I heard it. A soft humming. It came from behind me. Not a machine, not the wind, a voice. A woman's voice, low and eerie, humming an old lullaby. Something distant and wrong, the melody warbling like it was being sung underwater. I couldn't place the tune, but it sounded familiar, like something I hadn't heard since childhood, like something I wasn't supposed to remember. I didn't wait. I ran, back to the nurse's station, heart racing, trying to steady my breath. I told the supervisor. She called security. They checked the room. Nothing. No wheelchair in the center. No fresh tracks. Everything was exactly as it should be. Dusty, untouched, sealed. I asked about the camera feed. Security pulled it up, but the footage glitched, fuzzy static every time the frame showed 6B. When they tried to replay the moment I'd entered, the file crashed. Corrupted, they said. A week passed. Then two. I avoided that hallway when I could. Most of us did. Then came a new admit. He was brought in on a Wednesday. A young man, early 20s, transferred from another facility. Nonviolent, but paranoid. Muttered a lot to himself. Hadn't seen our war before. They walked him past 6B on the way to his room. Just past it. That's when he stopped. Froze like someone had yanked him by the spine. He pointed at the door, sealed now of course, and screamed. Loud. Full panic. It took 2 orderlies to calm him. I'll never forget what he shouted. That's where she lives. The lady in the chair. Don't let her see me. Don't let her in. He'd never been here before. Nobody had mentioned that room to him. Later, I looked through his intake papers. His previous facility had documented night terrors. Always the same phrase. The woman in the chair is watching me. Since that night, I've never entered room 6B again. But sometimes when the hall is quiet and the lights dim, I hear it. That same faint humming, slipping through the vents or drifting from under the door. Soft, sweet, like someone trying to lull you to sleep. But if you really listen, it's off-key, like something pretending to be human, like something that learned the song by watching and waiting. And I think sometimes if I opened that door again, the wheelchair wouldn't be empty. I've always loved the early shift. There's a kind of peace that settles over the ward in those hours before sunrise. Just me, the soft buzz of the overhead fluorescents, and the hum of machines gently breathing alongside the patients. My round started at 5:45 a.m. sharp. Every day, no deviation. I'm not one of those nurses who rushes through the morning meds half asleep. I like the quiet, the routine, the stillness. There was comfort in it, reassurance. The patients were often drowsy, some already awake, others still lost in sleep or sedation. Most of them knew me by now, trusted me. But one morning, something was off. It began with Carter in room 302. He's usually silent, a withdrawn, paranoid, schizophrenic with flat affect and slow responses. That morning, as I walked in with his pill cup, he looked me dead in the eye and whispered, "The pale woman told me not to trust you." I paused. What woman? He didn't answer, just rolled over, pulling the blanket over his head. I figure it was just a hallucination. It happens, especially after dosage adjustments. But then room 305, Ruthie, asked me, why was the night nurse in my room so late? There wasn't a night nurse last night, I said, smiling gently. Only security on call. Remember? Miranda called out sick. She frowned. But someone was here. She stood by the end of my bed. I woke up, and she was whispering to herself, or to me, I couldn't tell. She said she knew what I did. A chill crept to my arms. Patient after patient had similar stories. A woman with pale skin and stringy black hair. Silent except for whispers. Always appearing around 3 a.m. Always standing at the edge of the bed or in the doorway. Sometimes moving. Sometimes just watching. All of them described the same figure. Even those with completely different diagnoses, some not even prone to hallucinations. I brushed it off at first. Probably sleep paralysis, I thought. Mass suggestion, maybe. Sometimes, one patient's episode spreads like a fever dream through the ward. It happens. But then curiosity got the better of me. I asked our security guy, Liam, to pull the overnight footage from the west hallway, the main stretch connecting all 8 rooms in my section. We loaded the footage together in the tiny, windowless security office. Nothing looked out of the ordinary. Empty hallway. Camera flicker now and then, but it's an old system. He was about to close the file when I saw something. Wait, I said. Go back. Stop right there. Time code, 3:09 a.m. For 2 full seconds, the screen went completely black. Then came back. "Storm?" I asked. "Clear skies last night," Liam replied, clicking back through the log. No interruptions in power. No alerts from the panel either. Just that little gap. I squinted at the seconds after the blackout. There I was, visible on screen, my usual rounds. Clipboards in hand. Calm. Moving from room to room. But behind me, just in the corner of the hallway, a figure. Just the outline. Barely there. A pale smear shaped like a woman. Still. Unmoving. Every night. Same time. Same place. 3:09 a.m. The hair on my arms stood straight up. I reported it to admin. They told me not to worry. Probably a camera bug. Visual artifacting. The whole system was due for an upgrade next quarter. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. The next few nights, the patients grew worse. Paranoid. Agitated. Carter refused to sleep. Kept pacing and muttering about her. Ruthie wet the bed for the first time in years. Said the woman told her secrets don't stay buried here. But what really shook me was Marcus in room 311. He'd always been calm, high-functioning, cooperative. But on the 5th night, I found him screaming in his room, his hands clawing at his face. Blood everywhere. By the time we restrained him, he'd torn open both eyelids and damaged his corneas beyond repair. He just kept repeating, "She can't get in if I can't see her. She can't get in." He was transferred to the locked ward that morning. After that, I started noticing changes in myself. Little things. Waking up at odd times. Always 3:09 a.m. Sometimes gasping. Sometimes drenched in sweat. Once I woke up with 3 thin scratches down the middle of my back. Like fingernails. I live alone. My cat wouldn't come near me that day. I started dreaming about long, white hallways that never ended. Of being watched from behind. Of a voice I couldn't quite hear. Always just behind me. Whispering in a language that felt familiar but made no sense. I switched shifts the following week. I requested days only. Told them it was burnout. They didn't argue. Now I avoid the 3 a.m. hour like it's radioactive. But it hasn't helped. I still wake at 3:09 a.m. Not 3:08. Not 3:10. Every single time. And each time, my room feels colder. My hallway feels longer. My reflection in the mirror feels like it's watching. There's a part of me, when I try to ignore, that believes I brought her home with me. That whatever she is, she doesn't just belong to the hospital. That she waits and watches. And when I finally stop pretending she's not real, she'll speak. A code white usually means one thing. A patient's become aggressive, fighting, screaming, throwing furniture. You hear the announcement over the PA and sprint to the scene. Adrenaline kicks in, protocol takes over. It's scary, sure, but it's routine. We train for it. But that night, there were no patients involved. It was just after 2:30 a.m., quiet as usual. The rain had finally stopped, leaving behind a low fog curling around the building. I was sipping a lukewarm coffee in the break room when the emergency panel lit up red. Code white. Lower tunnel access. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. The tunnels under the old psychiatric wing had been sealed off since the fire in 1996, long before I was hired. No one went down there. Hell, most of the newer staff didn't even know those tunnels existed. I only knew about them because old-timers talked about them in whispers during night shifts. The panel didn't say much, just that motion had been detected. I radioed maintenance. Rick, our usual night guy, picked up. "I'm not going down there alone," he said immediately. "You kidding me? That place is cursed. I don't even keep a key to that door." I hesitated, but I didn't want to wait for security. So I offered to go with him. We met by the east stairwell and used the old access badge to override the lock. The metal door groaned open, revealing the entrance to a stairwell choked in shadows and dust. The smell hit us immediately, thick and acrid, like smoke soaked into concrete, mixed with mildew, rot, and something older, something wrong. Rick clicked on his flashlight. "Let's be quick," he muttered. We descended slowly. The air got colder with each step, and heavier, like something didn't want us there. The tunnels had a strange architecture. Low ceilings, thick concrete, narrow corridors that twisted without logic. They were once used to move violent patients between wards. Isolated, quiet, forgotten. After a few minutes, we passed a rusted gurney collapsed on its side, half covered in ash. A scorched nameplate hung from the wall beside it, the lettering too faded to read. Then came the smell, stronger now. Burnt plastic, wet stone, and beneath it all, that coppery scent you never forget once you've worked a trauma shift. Blood. That's when we heard it. Soft weeping. At first, we thought it was the sound of pipes, a hiss or groan echoing off the walls. But no, this was a voice. Human. Female. Crying in short, sharp sobs. Rick stopped in his tracks. "You hearing that?" he whispered. I nodded, pulse pounding. Could be a speaker glitch? I offered weakly, though I knew that didn't make sense. The intercoms had never reached this far underground. We followed the sound deeper until it faded, replaced by something worse. The dragging. A slow, metallic scrape, like something heavy being pulled across concrete. It had a rhythm to it. Clink, scrape, clink, scrape. Chains. I told myself it was echo, debris shifting, maybe rats. Anything. But it kept getting closer. Then we found the padded room. It was off to the right, behind a warped door barely hanging from its hinges. The walls were scorched black, insulation oozing like molasses through broken padding. And at the center of the room, anchored to a rotted wall, were 3 sets of chains, still bolted in place. Old, rusted but intact. One of them, just one, was moving. It wasn't swinging wildly, just a slow, steady tightening and releasing, like something invisible was testing its strength. Pulling, then letting go, over and over. Rick stepped back. Nope, no way. We need to go. But I couldn't move. My eyes were fixed on the corner, where the charred padding had peeled away. There were scratch marks, deep, erratic gouges in the concrete beneath the burnt foam. Some were shaped like fingers, others claws. Then came the whisper. Not loud, not aggressive, just close, right behind me. I'm still here. I turned so fast I nearly fell over. Nothing, no one, but the chain stopped moving. We ran. I've never run like that before. My lungs burned, my legs were jelly. Rick dropped his flashlight. I didn't go back for it. When we burst through the stairwell door and slammed it shut, we looked at each other in stunned silence. His face was pale. He was sweating hard, gasping for breath. Back upstairs, we reported what we saw. Security pulled the feed from the tunnel cameras. Most of it was corrupted. Static. Freezing. Frames skipping. But there was one clear image, just one. It showed Rick and me standing at the tunnel entrance. And behind us, no more than 3 feet away, was a woman, or what used to be one. Her face was half-burned, skin melted in ribbons down one side. The rest of her face was frozen in this expression. Not rage, not sorrow. Just emptiness. Her mouth slightly open, like she was whispering. Her eyes, black, hollow pits, stared directly at the camera. We had the door to that tunnel welded shut the next morning. I told myself that would be the end of it. But it's not. Some nights, when the building is quiet and the patients are asleep, I hear it again. A distant clink, scrape, clink, coming from the floor drains. And sometimes, only sometimes, I hear crying. So soft you could miss it. Unless you're listening for it. And I do now. Every night. It was around 2 a.m. when I first saw it. I just finished my rounds and ducked into the staff room for a moment of quiet. I remember the hum of the vending machine, the cold fluorescent lights overhead, and the low murmur of a radio one of the aides had left on earlier. Everything was still, routine. The kind of night shift calm I'd come to appreciate. Then I opened my locker. There, sitting inside locker 13, was a doll. At first glance, it looked handmade, stitched cloth body, maybe 12 inches tall. But it wasn't cute. It wore a tiny replica of our hospital scrubs, right down to the name tag on its chest that read RNM, Finn. Its eyes were glossy plastic, one slightly chipped. But what unsettled me most was the mouth, stitched shut with black thread, pulled tight in an exaggerated X. I stared at it, frozen for a moment. Then I did what anyone would do. I assumed it was some stupid prank. Tossed it in the bin, locked the door, and moved on. But the next night, it was back. This time, it wasn't in the locker. It was on the shelf, sitting upright, propped against my spare uniform. Facing out. Same stitched mouth. Same blank, unblinking stare. That's when the discomfort turned into dread. I asked around, jokingly at first, trying to keep my tone light. All right, who's the weirdo with the doll? But no one admitted to it. Most just looked confused. A couple laughed. One of the newer aides, Tomas, got real quiet and mumbled something about never joking around with Locker 13. I asked what he meant, but he just shook his head. I took the doll home with me that night. I know, stupid. I just wanted it gone. Figured if someone was playing games, they'd lose interest once it left the building. But that same night, when I got home, something new started. I found a drawing slipped under my apartment door. Childlike. Crayon on thin paper. It was a picture of me, sleeping in my bed. The perspective was strange. Like whoever drew it was standing right above me, watching. I didn't sleep much that night. The next day, another drawing appeared. This one had a big red X scribbled over my eyes. Then the patient started talking. It was subtle at first. One of the elderly residents, suffering from early dementia, said, "You look better when you don't talk." I thought nothing of it. But later, one of the schizophrenic patients whispered, "The nurse with no mouth told me not to trust you." I stopped in my tracks. "Nurse with no mouth?" I asked. He just smiled. "She's always with you now. She watches." I reported it. The psychiatrist chalked it up to projected delusions. Maybe, he suggested, I'd said something unconsciously that triggered shared imagery. Maybe the patients were mirroring each other's hallucinations. Maybe, but it didn't stop. The doll returned. Again, back in Locker 13. I tried burning it this time. I drove out to the old maintenance yard behind the facility, lit a fire in one of the empty oil drums, and tossed the damn thing in. I watched it smoke, black thread curling, plastic eyes bubbling. I felt relief, until I got home and saw it. On my kitchen counter, unburned, sitting upright, staring. That night, I woke up with my lips sealed shut. Literally. I don't know how else to describe it. I woke in a panic, heart pounding, and when I tried to scream, nothing came out. My mouth, my skin, felt tight, pressed closed. I stumbled to the mirror, and for a few seconds, it looked like my lips had been sewn shut with black thread. No blood, no pain, just skin where an opening should be. Then, as if it had never happened, my mouth opened. I gasped, fell to the floor sobbing. I told no one. What could I even say? The psychiatrist kept insisting it was stress, sleep paralysis, repressed trauma. I nodded along, knowing he didn't believe a word I said. The patients kept whispering about the nurse with no mouth. A few started covering their faces when I walked in. Some wouldn't speak to me at all. Then last week it got worse. I was on shift, doing inventory in the supply closet. I heard a soft click behind me. Locker 13 had popped open. No one was near it. I checked the camera feed later. Nothing. Just a quiet hallway. And then the locker door, opening. Inside were two dolls. Identical. Both dressed in scrubs. Both with the same stitched mouths. Both with name tags that read M.F. I stood there, staring at them, paralyzed. Then I slammed the door shut. Now, I don't open that locker anymore. I don't joke about it. I don't talk about it. But the drawings keep coming. Slipped under my door. Taped to the break room fridge. One even appeared in my locker at home. They're getting more detailed. The last one showed me sleeping again, but this time a figure stood over me. A doll in human shape, holding black thread and a needle. And I swear the stitching looked just like the one on my mouth. I don't know what it wants. I just know it's closer now, and I don't think it's finished with me. There are patients you remember because of what they did. Violent, erratic, loud. And then there are patients you remember because of what they didn't do. Patient 223 didn't do much of anything. When he was admitted, he came without a name. No ID, no medical history, no family. The intake notes said he'd been found wandering near an abandoned mill, just outside of town, barefoot and dazed. He was roughly mid-30s, thin, with eyes that never quite looked at you, always slightly off-center, like he was watching something just over your shoulder. Nonverbal. No response to stimuli. Didn't eat unless guided. Didn't sleep unless sedated. He became on by default. Low maintenance on paper. His file barely grew week to week. I do the routine, check vitals, change linens, say good morning, good night. He never responded. Until he did. It was a Thursday. I walked in at 6:15 a.m., same as always, and said out of habit, "Good morning, 223." This time he whispered back, "Good morning, 223," in my voice. My exact voice. At first, I didn't register it. I thought it was an echo, or maybe I'd muttered without realizing. But then I looked at him. He was smiling. Not a wide grin, just a small, knowing curl of the lips, like someone who'd just let a secret slip. I reported it as progress. Maybe he was coming out of his shell. Maybe delayed echolalia, or some form of advanced mimicry. The psychiatrist was intrigued, ordered additional observations. But over the next few days, the behavior grew stranger. He didn't just repeat me. He began mimicking others, but never immediately. He'd wait, a day, sometimes two. Then he'd recite an entire exchange word for word. Voice exactly like the original speaker. Tone, rhythm, even the pauses. Once, he repeated a full conversation I'd had with the pharmacist in the break room, alone. No cameras, no patients nearby. It wasn't loud or memorable. Just me complaining about my knee pain and the weather. But 223 mimicked it perfectly, using both voices. Even my half laugh when I'd said, "If I win the lottery, I'm never walking this hallway again." That's when I started to feel uneasy. I asked him how he knew what I'd said. He looked up, eyes sharp now, alert, and replied in my voice again. "You already told me, remember?" I stopped visiting him alone after that. Staff began noticing it, too. One of the interns swore she heard her own voice echoing back to her after she left his room. Another nurse said she heard him singing, badly, an old lullaby her mother used to sing, one she hadn't spoken aloud in decades. No one wanted to be assigned to 223 anymore. I made it a point to keep things short when I had to check on him. I stopped talking, avoided eye contact, but he didn't stop. One night, after a long shift, I was in the locker room, sitting alone, scrolling through my phone when I heard a voice from the hallway. My voice. Clear, confident, casual. "She doesn't come around anymore." It was exactly what I'd said to a coworker earlier that week when asked about my sister. Word for word. The same dull ache in the tone I tried to hide. Except I hadn't said it anywhere near the ward. And no one else knew about my sister. She and I hadn't spoken in almost 4 years. A falling out. Family stuff. You tell yourself you'll call eventually. You always think there's more time. The next day, I confronted 223. I broke protocol. Walked in, shut the door, and asked him straight, "How do you know things you shouldn't?" He stared through me for a long time, expression unreadable. Then, slowly, his lips moved. In my voice, "She's not going to wake up." I didn't understand what he meant. Not right away. That night, I got the call. My sister, Mina, had been found in her apartment, unresponsive. Aneurysm. Instant. No pain. No warning. Just gone. I didn't come the next day, or the day after. When I returned, I was told patient 223 was no longer with us. No longer in the system, the supervisor said. Transferred, or maybe discharged. Honestly, there's no record of his admittance, either. Probably admin error. That was impossible. I had his chart. I knew his routines. I had logged his vitals, documented his speech. But everything was gone. File scrubbed. No one even remembered who had assigned him to me in the first place. Room 17, the one he stayed in, is empty now. The lights flicker in there more than the rest of the floor. Maintenance says the wiring is fine, but I've stopped trying to explain it. Some nights, when the halls are quiet, I walk past room 17 just a little faster. Because every so often, I hear it. A whisper. Faint, but undeniable. My voice. Saying things I've never said. Not yet. Night shifts at Eldergate were usually the same. Meds, vitals, a few restless wanderers, and long stretches of quiet, humming fluorescent lights. It was predictable, boring even, but that was the kind of peace you don't question. Then room 11 started eating. I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean Astra's someone or something in that room began taking food trays. And what's worse, room 11 isn't supposed to be in use. That hallway of the ward was shut down after an asbestos scare years ago. We still use the kitchen in that wing, and sometimes left trays outside for pickup. But room 11? Sealed. Vacant. Always locked. Or so we thought. It began with a tray that didn't come back. No big deal. Maybe a new porter made a mistake. I let it go, but it kept happening. Every night, one tray left outside room 11 would disappear. At first, we thought maybe it was a prank. A board staffer, a patient who wandered and thought it was theirs. But when I asked around, no one owned up to it. Security pulled the hallway footage. Nothing. No movement. No figures. No shadows. Not even the tray being taken. One frame it's there, next it's gone. The cleaner, Albie, swore he'd locked that door every night. Even installed a new latch. But the trays kept disappearing. And they weren't just taken, they were licked clean. Fork marks. Grease smears. Bits of chewed bone left behind. It was gross. But what really got to me was how clean the trays were. Like someone or something was starving. Still, we chalked it up to bad procedure and slapped a padlock on the door. That should have been the end of it. But the next night, just before 2:15 a.m., I heard it. A soft scratching, like nails dragging along metal and then stone. Faint at first, then sharper, more desperate. I walked toward the hallway, and the closer I got, the more I felt it. Wrongness like pressure behind my eyes. The hallway lights flickered as I approached room 11. And that's when I heard it again. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Then a thud. A wet one. I stood in front of the door, unsure of what I'd even say if someone answered. I leaned forward and peered through the narrow mail slit built into the door. And saw eyes. Two of them. Too wide, too pale. The skin around them thin and raw. No lids, just gaping sockets, staring directly into mine. They were sunk impossibly deep in a face I couldn't fully see. Just darkness, a suggestion of movement, like something too long curled up and waiting. I gasped and stumbled back, heart pounding in my throat. By the time maintenance arrived, the scratching had stopped. The hallway was still again. They opened the door. Inside, it was cold. The kind of cold that sinks into your bones, where the air feels wet. The stench hit us immediately. Rotting meat, cloying and sour. There was nothing in the room. No furniture, no patient bed, not even a fixture on the wall. Just claw marks, long, jagged trails scored into the concrete floor, still wet and glistening, like whatever made them had just retreated. That was the first time I asked admin to shut the room permanently. They looked at me with confusion. There's no room 11 in that hallway, one of them said flatly. I thought maybe it was a joke. Bureaucratic denial. But I checked the facility blueprints myself. That wing didn't exist. Not officially. The hallway didn't appear on any floor plan printed after 2002. No room 11. No record. I printed a copy of the blueprints and showed it to Albie. He squinted, confused. I cleaned that hallway every shift. I locked that room every night. We stood outside the door again the next night. I traced my fingers along the nameplate. Room 11. It was rusted but there. Real. But not real enough to be remembered. That night, at exactly 2:14 a.m., I watched through the small slit. I left a tray outside. Sat just a few feet away, heart pounding. The lights flickered. I blinked. It was gone. No sound. No movement. The tray had vanished. I looked through the slit again and saw a mouth. Not a human mouth. Too wide. No lips. Just rows and rows of sharp, small teeth. It didn't open or growl. It didn't move. It just hovered in the dark, breathing slow, heavy breaths like it was full now. The next morning, there was another tray left outside my locker. Cold. Licked clean. It hadn't come from our kitchen. I asked once more about sealing the hallway. This time, the request was declined with a warning, don't ask again. No reason. Just a tone that said more than the words did. I know what I saw. I know a feed down there. I stopped talking about it. But I still clock in every night. And every night, at 2:14 a.m., a tray goes missing. Doesn't matter if we lock the kitchen or leave nothing out. Something still eats. And I've stopped asking why. It started as a hallway quirk. You know the type? Old wiring, cheap bulbs. There's a stretch near the east wing where one light always flickered when you walked beneath it. Buzz too, like a tiny bug zapper trying to sing. Most people ignored it. Maintenance marked it low priority, but it started humming. Not just buzzing, humming. I noticed it on a quiet Monday night, just after 3 a.m. I was doing rounds, alone, sipping burnt coffee, thinking about the grocery list I'd forget anyway. I passed under the flickering bulb, and that's when I froze. The buzz had shifted. It wasn't random anymore. It had rhythm. A lilting, uneven hum, soft and deliberate, like someone tried to remember a song. And then it hit me. The melody. It was the lullaby my grandmother used to sing to me. I hadn't heard it in 20 years, not since she passed. It wasn't a popular tune. Something old world, Slavic maybe. Her own version, slightly off-key and haunting in that way only childhood memories are. I stood there, beneath that humming light, my breath caught in my throat. The melody wavered, then grew louder, still faint, like it was coming from inside the bulb itself. I took a step back. The lights ahead blinked, one by one, in sequence, almost like beckoning. I told myself it was just faulty wiring, sleep deprivation, stress, anything. But my feet moved forward anyway. The hallway seemed longer than usual. Just a bit. Maybe I was disoriented. Maybe it was the lighting. I walked forward, each step feeling heavier. The humming shifted again, melody bending into something slower, darker. Notes trailing off like breath in cold air. I turned around. The hallway behind me was gone. I mean, it was still there, but it stretched far beyond what it should have. The wall-mounted defibrillator I'd passed 2 steps ago was now barely visible. The nurse's station gone, replaced by another flickering bulb, buzzing softly in the distance. I started walking back. Fast. That's when the walls pulsed. They didn't move like something physical. It was more like a sensation, like the hallway was breathing. Every blink of light felt synchronized, like the whole corridor was alive, pulsing in rhythm with that eerie tune. And then I saw something. Not clearly, just a silhouette. A sliver of motion at the edge of the light. It wasn't walking or crawling. It was swaying, like it was dancing, just slightly offbeat. I froze. The flickering bulb above me flicked once, a full, blacked-out second. And when it came back on, the figure was closer. Still indistinct. Still wrong. I turned and ran. No matter how far I ran, the hallway never ended. The lights blinked overhead like metronomes, each one flickering off just as I reached it, plunging me into darkness before blinking back to life behind me. I didn't scream. I don't know why. Maybe I couldn't. I ran until my lungs burned, until the walls started whispering. Not words, tones, melodies, layers and layers of voices humming in that same twisted lullaby. Finally, I collapsed. I curled against the wall, panting, the humming wrapping around me like a blanket too tight to shake off. The light above me sang softly. And somewhere, in that terrible echo of notes, I swear I heard my grandmother's voice. And she was weeping. When I opened my eyes, I was sitting in a chair at the nurse's station. Lucia, the day nurse, was shaking my shoulder. "Sivan, you good? Shift's over." I blinked at the clock. 7:05 a.m. I just stepped out, I stammered. "I was only gone for 12 minutes, she said, frowning. "You signed out for a bathroom break. That was 4 hours ago." I didn't know what to say. I checked the cameras later. They show me walking into the hallway, but never walking out. Just gone, until I was found sitting, silent and still, in my chair. I reported the flickering light again. Maintenance replaced the bulb. But the next night, it was back. Same buzz, same flicker, same faint hum. I avoid that hallway now. Doesn't matter what the assignment is. I reroute my rounds, cut through the north wing. No one questions it. But the humming finds me sometimes. In the break room, in the supply closet. Always faint, always behind me. And when I sleep, I dream of light. Endless hallways with flickering bulbs that pulse like heartbeats. Walls that breathe. Shadows that hum in the voice of someone I loved. And I wake with the tune still in my ears. Not buzzing anymore. Singing. We all liked Mr. Eden at first. He was quiet, polite, almost delicate in how he moved. Rare for this place. He never yelled. Never resisted meds. He just folded. Origami, I mean. All day, every day. You'd hand him a piece of paper, and within minutes he'd turn it into something extraordinary. Birds mid-flight, wolves baring their teeth, little dancers twirling on a fingertip. No patterns, no guides. He said he just remembered the shapes. We'd find them all over the ward, balanced on windowsills, lined up on the TV. sometimes tucked into staff mailboxes with names scribbled underneath. It was strange but harmless. Beautiful even. Then came the paper man. We noticed it during room clean-out after Mr. Eden was transferred to a long-term facility. His shelves were cleared, his drawers empty. But sitting in the exact center of the floor was a single origami figure, about 4 inches tall. A human form, more detailed than the others. It wore a coat, had hands with fingers. But what really got to me were the eyes, 2 tiny black dots pressed into the paper. Not ink, burnt, like someone had singed them with a fine tip. It was eerie. We tossed it in the bin. The next morning, it was back. Same position, same eyes, waiting in the middle of the floor. Maintenance swore the room had stayed locked all night. No one had been in. We tossed it again. 3 days later, I saw it on the windowsill in the nurse's station. I asked if anyone was playing a prank. No one admitted to it. The newer techs didn't even know who Mr. Eden was. Then the disappearances began. First, a part-time CNA. Didn't show for shift. No call. No answer home. Just gone. Then a second. A janitor. Also vanished without a trace. No forced entry. No suspicious activity on cameras. 1 minute they were here, the next, nothing. And each time, a new figure appeared. I only realized the connection the day I found a paper figure that looked exactly like our supervisor, Lydia. It had a tiny clipboard, even a sliver of red felt wrapped around its shoulders, her signature cardigan, and the watch. I'll never forget the watch. Silver band, cracked face. The detail was exact. I locked it in the supply drawer. The next morning, Lydia didn't come in. HR said she resigned unexpectedly. That's all we were told. Her office was empty by noon. The drawer where I'd stashed the figure? Empty too. After that, I started checking the windowsills obsessively, watching the floors, scanning tables. The figures kept showing up. A nurse with braids, a tech with a limp. Gone. Gone. Now they're getting closer to me. At first it was just a nurse with short hair, then one with a name tag starting with V. Last week, I found one with my coat, then another with a tiny coffee mug, just like mine. I stopped throwing them away. I've kept them all, lined them up in my locker, thinking maybe, somehow, it'll keep them contained. But yesterday, I found one I hadn't made space for. It was sitting on my pillow in the break room. It had my badge number written on its back, and the eyes, burnt, hollow circles, were staring up at me. They weren't empty. They were watching. I don't know what he left behind when he folded that paper man. I don't know if it's a curse, or a warning, or something worse. But I know this. If you find one that looks like you, run. There's something about the staff bathroom at the end of East Wing, specifically the sink. Not the plumbing, though that hisses sometimes. Not even the flickering light overhead, which maintenance blames on old circuits. It's the mirror, and what looks back. For months, I'd brush it off. The mirror had a small crack in the upper left corner, thin, jagged, almost like a spider leg etched into the glass. It was easy to ignore, but that bathroom always gave me the creeps. It was cold, even in summer. The air just a little too still. You'd wash your hands and feel watched, like someone was just outside the door. Or worse, already inside. One night, after Med's round, I stopped in to rinse off a nosebleed. Long shift. Empty halls. I remember the fluorescent buzz above me, the way it made my skin look too pale in the mirror. I bent down, splashed water on my face, and when I looked up, there was a figure behind me. Tall, thin, unnaturally still. Long fingers dangling past where knees should be. A blurred face just out of focus, as if the mirror couldn't quite capture it. I spun around. Nothing. Just the stall door slightly ajar. But when I turned back, the crack in the mirror had spread, now curling downward in a delicate arc like it was reaching. I touched it. The glass was warm. After that, the mirror stopped behaving. I don't mean it glitched or warped like in bad horror movies. It was subtle, just wrong enough. When I moved, my reflection followed, but always just a half beat too slow. Turn your head, blink, smile, it was all just slightly delayed. Then the smiles came first. I'd stare, expressionless, and my reflection would grin back. Big, toothless, patient. One night, I tested it. I kept my face stone still, stared at the mirror for a full minute. The reflection blinked. I hadn't. It smiled. I didn't. That's when I asked admin to replace the damn thing. They laughed at first. Haunted mirror? You're working too many doubles, Hale. But eventually, after the third maintenance ticket citing unexplained warping, they agreed. It shattered during removal. The janitor, mad a quiet guy, barely spoke, cut his hand on the largest shard. Deep gash. Bad enough to bleed all over the sink. Except it wasn't blood. It looked like oil. Thick, black, slow to drip. I remember one of the aides backing away and whispering, "That's not right." Matt didn't say anything. He stared at the wound like it wasn't even his. Then he walked out. Just left the room. He never came back. No resignation. No call. Nothing in the system. Gone. We got a new mirror a week later. Sleek, modern, with a beveled edge. No cracks. No history. But the weirdness didn't stop. The new mirror was fine at first. Then, about a month in, I noticed something. A faint line, starting at the upper left corner. Thin, jagged, almost like a spider leg. The crack had come back. Same shape, same angle, same sense of something waiting. At first, it didn't lag. It just reflected. Then the delay returned. Slow at first, blinking half a second late. Turning just a bit too delayed. Now it smiles again, sometimes before I even walk in. Other nurses have started mentioning it, too. One said she saw her reflection move when she was still. Another said the faucet turned on by itself when she looked away. But we don't report it anymore. We don't talk about it. We just use the other bathroom when we can. If we have to use that one, we don't linger. Some nights, though, I forget. Exhausted, distracted, I catch my reflection out of habit. And it grins, wider than it should. Eyes just a little too dark. Once, it mouthed something I couldn't hear. But I saw the shape of the words. Let me out. Now, every shift I check that crack. It's growing again. Down the side. Reaching. I don't know what's on the other side of that glass. But I know it's watching. And one day, that reflection won't wait for me to smile first. Thank you to all my amazing viewers for joining me in these chilling, emotional journeys. If this story moved you or gave you goosebumps, hit that like button and subscribe to join us deeper in the shadows. Every like breathes life into another tale, and every subscriber becomes part of our growing circle of listeners. Now, take a deep breath because our next chilling story is just around the corner. Have you ever had an experience like John's? Or maybe you have your own story of an unexplainable presence, a quiet moment that still echoes in your heart? I'd love to hear it in the comments below. Each of your stories adds something special to this growing community of listeners, of feelers, of souls who believe there's more out there than we often see. And if someone you know might appreciate a good scare or a good cry, please share this video with them. There's more to come, more stories to tell. And remember, sometimes the scariest tales are the ones that could happen to any of us. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video if you dare.